Recorded live from a pub in deepest, darkest and windiest Birmingham. Welcome to Bible After Hours. Yes. In this podcast series, we are looking at the Bible, what it is all about, and is it worth reading? My name is Luke Ollie, and I think the Bible is a great book, and it's helped me a lot in my life. But I'm no expert on it, and I know there's so much that I could learn about. Luckily, I have a few mates who are far more knowledgeable about it than me, so I thought I'd come up with the idea of recording a podcast series in one of my local pubs to give me an excuse to hang out with my mates. To make it more fun, and to be honest, massively more scary for me, we thought we'd open it up to a live audience who can come along with us on this journey of exploring an amazing book. Yes, so we have a crowd in, and we're going to enjoy ourselves, and we're going to be doing this whole thing with an unashamedly positive take on everything. That's right, I want to know why this book has changed the world so much. What amazing stuff is in there, and what we can all learn from it now in the 21st century. There are a few house rules for those in the room, but also for you, dear listeners, as well. So, firstly, number one, you better know yourself. We all come with preconceptions, backgrounds, and hang-ups. Maybe your dad was a warlock and your mum was a nun. It's possible, right? But just be aware of where you're coming from, and ideally come with an open mind. Secondly, you don't know it all. In fact, I find the more that I know, the less I understand. So we're going to touch on massive topics, and if we start thinking we know it all, then it maybe just shows we really, really don't know it. And finally, don't shoot the messenger, i.e. me. Like literally, please don't. Or crucify, or stone them, or burn them at the stake, or any cancel like this. Please don't do this. Maybe there's a special prayer we can say at the end to keep the internet trolls away. We'll see how we go. So is everyone happy with the rules of the game? Yeah. Okay, great stuff. All right, so let's play then. Tonight is our first Bible After Hours podcast, so we thought we'd start the first session on the Bible. Why should I read it, and where to start? I'm hoping tonight we can squeeze in an overview of the whole book, ways to read the Bible, and where to start. And we'll try and fit in actually reading the Bible as well, somewhere in there. So there's lots to get through. But before we go any further, I want to introduce my wonderful assistant for the evening, Narek.
Hello, friend.
Hello, Narek. I'm glad that you've spoken to the microphone. I wasn't fully sure if you were going to say hello, so the listeners can hear. So you're sitting, Narek, in our unofficial dictionary corner.
Yep.
Right. And you are going to be the wisdom keeper for the evening.
Yeah.
Essentially, you're going to be able to Google things, right?
Yes, that's right. I'm going to fact check to make sure everything they say is correct using two of the most valuable sources.
Yes.
ChatGPT and Google. But yeah, I'll be here researching everything that these guys say, which can be too Christianese. So I will, fact check here.
Yeah, brilliant. True. Excellent. Thanks, Narek. So yeah, the panelists don't get the chance to Google things when they're here with me. So we need, somebody to explain the fancy words that might be coming out there as well. I certainly won't know all about them, so it'd be good to learn from that. And Narek, I know you're from Birmingham Vineyard, and you run the youth and student work. So do you class yourself as a Bible expert?
Ooh, not a Bible expert, but I know the Bible quite well.
Good. Yeah. Good. There's some strong foundations there that we can work with. Brilliant. Yeah. So I might ask you some of the questions then as we go along, maybe.
Amazing. Sounds good, mate.
Yeah. Cool.
I charge £5 a day.
I bought you tea tonight already. What more do you want from me? So you're also going to be taking questions from the audience throughout the night, and potentially running a few polls to get their thoughts to feed into the discussions. And I believe, in fact, you've already run one poll before we started. So do we have any results on this? What was the question? What were the potential options And how
Yes.
did we get on?
Yes, we do. We did have a poll, and the question was, how much of the Bible have you read? The options was never read it, read few stories in Sundays school had in a school assembly. That was the second choice.
Yeah.
Third choice was I pick it up ever so often. Fourth choice was I'm pretty familiar with it. And then last choice was I'm a Bible reading genius, baby.
Baby.
So
Okay.
those are options. So we're gonna start from the lowest. So never read it was 0%. So everyone here
Everyone has touched it in some
have
way or
picked
another.
up the Bible, in some point in their life. With the 8% score, we had read few stories on a Sunday school or heard in a school assembly, and then we got another 8% with I'm a Bible reading genius, baby. So we got one or two people here, Bible reading geniuses.
Probably the panelists, because they probably
Probably.
Yeah.
And then we got I pick it up ever so often 17%, which is good. And then we had 67% of people in this room said I'm pretty familiar with reading the Bible.
Okay, cool. Well, so tonight is all about how to read the Bible, and if you were like completely newbie, didn't know, never touched it before, what do you do? So for those people who know all about it, then they're going to be potentially throwing in some ideas as well, I imagine. As we'll see how we get on. We might get them some of them to come and stand in as well. Well, thanks for volunteering, Narek, to do this. It's going to be good fun. So you're going to be essentially Susie Dent for the night?
Yes.
Do you know who Susie Dent is?
No, I have no clue who that is. But let's go with it.
She's a legend. Check her out. She's from Countdown, right? She's very good with the dictionary. So I think it's time for us to bring our first guest onto the panel. So please give a big welcome to Pete Cooper. Oh, now you need to set yourself up. The microphone has sort of dropped to sort of crotch level, which is not helpful. There we go. Yeah, excellent. You might start dropping again. I can see it start. Right, just tighten that as we go. This is what happens with live events. Right, so firstly, thank you for joining us on Bible After Hours, and we've had the honor. Well, I've had the honor of being one of your neighbours for many years. So actually, we've got to hang out relatively regularly in general because we're good friends. But you're actually one of the reasons why I set up this podcast in the first place, because we're all busy people. You and I have both got kids, so actually getting any time to hang out in a pub and chat about random stuff is rare. It's fair to say. So tonight is the chance we get to do it, because I know the Bible is one of your passions.
Yep, definitely.
Yeah. So what do you, when I say it's one of your passions, what sort of thing do you tend to do with it? Are you just interested in it, or what's your background on it?
So on a personal level, I kind of made a commitment to follow Jesus properly when I was about 15, 16, and quite quickly I was advised to start reading the Bible. And so I started reading the Bible.
Good advice.
And started reading a bit of the Bible called Ephesians. And I felt one time about a few weeks into reading the Bible that God, this sense that I should read the book of Job, and I didn't know what that was at all. And I kind of started reading the book of Job, and it was like God was speaking to me through it. And over the next few half a year, I read quite a lot of the New Testament and got really into reading the Bible, and then went on. I wanted to read the Bible properly, and someone suggested I should go to Bible college, and someone said, don't go straight away, go and do something else. So I spent a couple of years working at an outdoor centre in Scotland, and then I did a first degree in theology, but specialising in biblical studies, which meant I got to learn some of the languages the Bible's written in, so some Greek and some Hebrew.
So what is theology?
Theology is people's understanding of God. Okay. It's often shorthand for Christian theology. So like what is God? What is God like? What does God do? Our understanding of God. And a lot of it in Christian theology is based on the Bible. Sure. And then I went on to do postgraduate biblical studies as well. And I spent the last 10 years teaching theology and biblical studies in a college, so academically focused.
So
work
I
with the
think
Bible.
tonight is going to hopefully just scrape the top level of knowledge that you have, because I know you get really into this, and you're the sort of guy that I sort of mildly mock when I see you pull out a Greek Bible and a Hebrew Bible and can actually read it.
I enjoy being mocked by you, Luke, and I will enjoy exacting my
It's
revenge
deep
with some
respectful
comments
mocking
that are coming.
that I give, because I can hardly read English, never mind Hebrew or Greek. So it's an impressive skill to be able to do. So you're going to help us in the first section of this podcast, which is going to basically all about what is the Bible, right? So
Yeah.
if I've never touched the Bible before, I've got no idea what's contained within it, what's in there. So I guess to start us off, I'd be interested to know some sort of headline facts about the Bible. What would you, if you were to try and summarize what it is to a random person in the street, or to me even, what would you say? What's in there?
Yeah, so we say the Bible, and it's got a front cover and a back cover, which makes it feel like one book.
Yeah.
But the word Bible is kind of a Greek word meaning books. And for most of the time when we're in Britain, we're using a Bible that's got a collection of 66 different books together, which split into two halves, which Christians tend to refer to as the Old Testament and the New Testament. And there is a random, well, not entirely random, but a very diverse mixture of stuff within those different books. Probably, I've got a little stat here. So of those books that are in the Bible, often they contain different styles of writing within them, but about 60%-ish, give or take, is narrative. So story, things that have happened. Some of those stories are fictitious. Jesus told some made-up stories to make a point. Okay. Some of those stories are stories of things that happened. 20% or so is prophetic writing, which some of which is, this is what God says to you in the here and now, and a small bit of that is future kind of predictions.
So, so prophetic, you mean, what does that?
Prophetic, the idea of prophetic is the idea of this is what God is saying to you right now. This is God's message. I am being God's mouthpiece.
Like predicting the future? Like, oh, this is going to happen 20 years' time from now? Or
sometimes, but very often not. Very often prophecy is not about the future. It's about this is what God needs to say to you now. This is a message for you right here, right now. Okay. Rather than this is what's going to happen in 100 years' time. Yeah. There's a little bit of future stuff, but actually a lot of it is focused on now. Okay. And there's also things like some of the Bible is letters written to people. Some of it is the Gospels, which are a bit like ancient biographies of Jesus. Yeah. And a few other things. And there's some poetry in there. There's some sayings, some proverbs in there, some wisdom sayings, some songs in there as well. There's a bit of a mixture of stuff. Okay. All right. Well, we'll dive into the structure of that in a bit. And is that all written in English? No. Most of the Bible is in 3 languages. So Hebrew. Most of the Old Testament's in Hebrew. There are a few bits that are written in Aramaic. Some bits of the book of Ezra, some bits of the book of Daniel are written in Aramaic because Hebrew was kind of dying out, some of the later books. Then most of the New Testament was written in Greek, which was actually a really widespread language. Thanks to Alexander the Great and his armies taking over most of the world, Greek was a language that a lot of people spoke. Right, okay. So when we're picking up a Bible now, presumably it's gone through a number of different translations then, because obviously we're reading it in quite a modern, well, we can, depending on the version we have, quite a modern day English. So, yeah, when was it initially translated into English? I assume that must have been quite some time ago. Well, that's a good question. I didn't prep him for this one. You didn't prep me for that question, and I always get the two people's names mixed up in my head, so I have to get Narek to fact check this. Yeah. So the Old Testament has a history of translation. Before Jesus, the Old Testament was being translated into Greek. And quickly into certain other languages as well. And from the early days, the New Testament books were being translated from Greek into Latin, which is the language of the Roman Empire, into Egyptian dialects of Coptic and Baharic. So they're being translated into languages fairly quickly. There are, who was some of the first people to translate? I think we'd have to go. I haven't got that answer in my head at all at the moment. Yeah, so I assume nowadays it's been translated into a lot of languages as well. Yeah, I did come prepared with that. So there's an organisation called Wycliffe Bible Translators that do translation, and their aim is to translate the Bible into every language that exists. And their monthly update from October says that there are 7,391 languages in the world. So far, 3,333 have no scripture yet, which apparently is down from 34 from last month, which means there are still 1 in 5 people in the world that don't have the Bible in their language, which means that 4 in 5 do. And in the last month, 781 different languages were complete Bibles, but actually often people will translate bits of the New Testament first, bits of the Bible. There's so many books that you wouldn't translate the whole thing just like that. You'd focus on certain bits first.
Okay.
So
we're going to pause there because Narek has raised his hand. I believe.
Are we going to talk about
Google or ChatGPT has provided some sort of level of answers?
We could test me by saying where we're guessing.
Well, I'll go some cool facts. So, as you said, Pete, from Greek, the New Testament has been translated to Latin first. And then Syriac is the second language. So between 2nd to 5th century, it's an early translation for Aramaic-speaking Christians like the Peshtita. And then Coptic, 3rd to 4th century, which is for Egyptian Christians that are quite one of the oldest Christians who live in Egypt. And then Gothic, 4th century, one of the first Germanic translations. And then Armenian was 5th century, early Christians communities in Armenia, which is actually Armenia was the first country officially becoming Christian as an official national government religion. And then 6th is Georgian, 5th century for Georgian church. Okay. So those are some cool facts of the Bible.
Some good facts there.
Some early things there. And then you've got moves like, part of the reason why the Protestant Reformation happened, which is a massive cultural event in Europe, was certain people wanting to have the Bible in English. Tyndale was someone that was involved in translating it early on. I think it was Tyndale his vision was he wanted the person in the pushing the plough to be able to read the Bible in their own language rather than just going to a church where things were being done in Latin.
Right, and of course then it was only the priest that would have been able to read it out.
Potentially.
Yeah, okay.
And Martin Luther the same, wanting the Bible in German for his people.
So the likes of you and I can actually understand it.
Yeah.
Cool. Well, so you said there were 66 books in this Bible, and like you said, they are of different types. So I was wondering if you could provide maybe a few just illustrations of what would it look like if something was a psalm or a proverb or something like that, maybe a prophecy or something. How would they sound? Are they written all in the same way, or do they have different feels about them? And if it's a song, do you have to sing it? Is that something that you can do for me?
Wow. Wow. I'm going to start with some proverbs. I'm going to start with one of my favourite proverbs.
Okay.
Proverbs, some of the bits are slightly longer passages, but often it's just these little detached sayings. In English, we have proverbs like "a stitch in time saves 9." Look before you leap.
And are they in the Bible, or are they just proverbs in general?
The Bible has proverbs like this.
Okay.
A gentle answer turns away wrath, but a harsh word stirs up anger. And I used to have that at work stuck to my phone. So that when people that annoyed me phoned up, I'd be like, be patient with them, be patient with them, be patient with them. The next proverb, completely different, slightly different topic. The tongue of the wise commends knowledge, but the mouth of the fool gushes folly.
Okay.
Is how that's been translated here. Chapter 15, verse 3, the next proverb. The eyes of the Lord are everywhere, keeping watch on the wicked and the good. These are just sayings.
Okay.
And with a proverb, it's not necessarily fact. It's not historical. It's not scientific, but it's generally a good kind of thing to live by.
There's some sort of wisdom that somebody somewhere has
some kind of you can imagine. And actually, these proverbs would have been. You've got to go back in time to a culture where most people couldn't read and most people couldn't write. It's very an oral culture. Things would have been passed on by word of mouth. People would have memorized things. Nowadays, we're not good at remembering things. We don't need to. Who remembers their friends' phone numbers nowadays?
Yeah,
you don't need to, because it was all saved in your phone. If you go back to a culture where people couldn't read and write, you passed on your stories verbally about your history. And so sayings have been passed on by people in that kind of way.
And then, so was that written by was the whole Bible written by like one person who just happened to remember it all?
No.
Or how did that work then?
Not at all written by one person. For some bits of the Bible, we know who wrote that bit of the Bible. Some of the letters in the Bible, the person who wrote the Bible puts their name at the start of the letter.
They signed it, did they, or something? Or?
Kind of, but the other way around. So with Paul's letters, he starts by saying, I'm Paul. He doesn't say, hi, Dave, this is a letter to you. It's like, I'm Paul and I'm writing to you. Then the greetings go at the end. It's kind of the other way around.
Okay.
But other parts of the Bible are completely anonymous. And some of the bits of the Bible are written down a long time, written down or edited quite a long time after they happened. So there would have been a history of transmission before that.
Okay.
So they were written mostly in Israel, around the Middle East, that kind of land, or Palestine, that kind of area, but over 1,000 years plus. So
over 1,000 years. So this document has developed over time, and people have added to it and created books that are.
I think a lot of the books would have circulated separately at first, and they would have been collected together. So Paul didn't sit down and write all of his letters in one go.
No.
But actually, at some early stage, Paul's letters were collected together. The earliest copy we have of anything that Paul wrote is Papyrus 46 from, say, 200 AD, which is a collection of 10 of Paul's letters and Hebrews.
Okay.
So someone would have collected them together at an early stage.
So when was the Bible the Bible? When did that? So because you got all these different letters and the Genesis, Exodus, Leviticus. These are that was the Torah, wasn't it? Yeah, is that right? So these existed in different forms and different ways. Who was the first person that decided that putting them all together was going to be a good thing?
Yeah, it's a really good question, and there's not a quick answer to that question. And I need to reframe the question as well, because the question needs to be answered in terms of the Old Testament and in terms of the New Testament.
Okay, so they were compiled in different times, were they?
So I'm going to go with New Testament first. Obviously, our New Testament, 27 books written during the first century at different times during that first century by different people.
Yeah.
They weren't the only things that Christians wrote. There were other things as well. And there's a question there of how did we get to a place where we got 27? Why have we got 4 Gospels, not 3? Why have we got 4, not 5? It's a question that can be asked. Why were these letters were preserved?
If I was the guy that wrote the letter that didn't get put in, I'd be pretty annoyed by that, because the Bible is like pretty well known nowadays, isn't it? And you're written in history now as like a famous person and all that. But so are there people that wrote some amazing stuff that didn't get added in just because they were too late to the show? Or
possibly, yeah. So, but also some of the stuff that didn't make it in because it was a bit weird.
Okay.
But we can come to that in a moment. So why have we got the books that we've got in our New Testament? Some of them were preserved because they were popular. Okay, if you're going to copy a book 2,000 years ago or 1,900 years ago, it takes an awful lot of effort. Okay, not many people can read and write. You're copying onto ancient kind of paper called papyrus, which is like reed that's been dried from the Dead Sea kind of area in Egypt, pressed together and written on. It's quite an expensive, quite a time-consuming process. So there's an element to the books that we've got in the Bible is a survival of the fittest to an extent. The popular ones were retained, and some of the other things were not retained so much. Our books in the New Testament, a lot of them were retained because they were useful, because they were popular, because they were believed. Some of them have claims to authenticity of who wrote them, people that actually were there with Jesus, people that were significant in the early church. They stood the test of time.
Yeah.
And into the first few centuries, you start to get people with lists of these are the books that I accept. And slowly but surely there became a consensus around some books. Some books were debated. In the first few centuries, the 4 Gospels that we have were clearly quite popular, some more popular than others. But other books like Revelation, some of the smaller letters at the end of the New Testament were debated between different churches. But eventually, probably a definitive date for the New Testament is 382 at the Council of Rome.
Narek, you need to check that straight away, mate.
27 books attested there. But even then, when Martin Luther in the Protestant Reformation questioned the validity of the letter to James, didn't like it. He said it was a letter of straw. Didn't like that at all. So there's still some challenge there.
Can you just discount a letter though, because you feel like it doesn't quite?
Not really. By then it's so established.
Yeah.
But there were obviously other things that either fell out of popular usage or were discounted. There were also some letters that were generally liked by the church, like Didache and a few other things, which is a teaching. The letter of Barnabas is an interesting one, but they were written 2nd century, perhaps a little bit later.
So they weren't included.
Christian leaders like Paul kept writing letters to each other, but actually generally we're looking at the 1st century ones and ones that had connections to Jesus. Yeah. Old Testament, completely different thing. So
we'll just check Narek. Was that date anyway? And were you able to get that one?
382 Council of Rome.
Oh, you're still checking.
Canon of New Testament.
Missed it. You think you missed it? Okay, so on the Old Testament, then I'm assuming because of the name suggests it's older.
Yeah.
So when was that all pulled together then? Was that sort of still not a thing when Jesus was around?
Yes, that is correct. It was 382 Rome, Council of Rome.
Oh, brilliant stuff. Good. Well done, Pete. My brain doesn't do dates, so yours clearly does. So the Old Testament, was it a thing when Jesus was around, or was it still?
So the Old Testament, first of all, you just want to just challenge the name Old Testament a little bit, because actually those 39 books that we have in our Christian Bibles or Protestant Christian Bibles that are Old Testament, they're not just Christian scripture. They are Jewish scripture.
Yes, of course.
And actually there's a challenge there that says, calling them Old Testament has an explicitly Christian value loaded thing to it, because you're saying actually we need to interpret it in the light of the New Testament, in light of Jesus.
So I assume the Jews don't call it the Old Testament.
By and large, no. And there's several names that have been suggested. There's the Jewish Scriptures is one possible name, but that's not perfect, because actually Jewish Scripture includes, say, the Mishnah and Talmud and later other scriptures and other texts. Some people refer to it as the Hebrew Bible. But again, that's not perfect, because it implies that it's all written in Hebrew, and some of it was written in Aramaic, and actually we don't have to have Hebrew to be able to read it because it's been translated. The Old Testament Hebrew Bible tends to have 3 sections in kind of Jewish thinking. The first one is the Torah, which means instruction or law. Mm-hmm. Often we think of it as law, but quite a lot of it is narrative. It's not necessarily legal. And that seems to have been the first 5 books, Genesis, Exodus, Leviticus, Numbers. They seem to have been agreed upon earlier than some of the other bits. They were written earlier, but possibly had some of an editing history as well.
Did you say that was called the Torah?
The Torah.
Okay, you mentioned 4.
Or the Pentateuch was another word for it.
Is Deuteronomy the 5th one?
Deuteronomy is the 5th one,
right, Okay. Right, okay.
So, but actually, we don't have precise dating for when they were agreed as being a law as such, a scripture as such. When they were gathered together, there is some educated guesswork that goes on.
Can you give me a rough date as to when you think they were around? Like, are we talking sort of Jesus' time, or were they
before Jesus'
knocking
time?
Around well before then?
If you read on the history of how the Old Testament came to be, one of the key moments, a moment of crisis, was when the Babylonians came in 587 and captured a load of Israel.
587 BC.
And took them to Babylon, and the temple was destroyed, and such things happened then. And a lot of scholars would say that in that period following that, there was a question of we need to confirm our identity and work out what our texts are.
Right. So it was by that point, it was sort of forming into what we now recognise.
Probably. We don't have, for those 5 books, but we don't have that kind of, we don't actually really know. So scholars are in the land of probably, or it seems likely. It doesn't mean that they were written then, probably written, and bits going back much, much earlier. But actually agreed and recognised then. So you say... And then the next section is the prophets, which would have been a bit later. Some of the books of the Old Testament were still debated for quite a long time, like Esther and Daniel were definitely, there was debates going on into the 1st century after Jesus' time.
As to whether they should be included within that body of work.
As Jewish scripture. And for a long time, people said, it was agreed at the Council of Jamnia in about sort of AD 90 or 90 CE, if you want to use that dating. But actually, a lot of scholars have now questioned that. Did that even happen?
Okay.
So it's a bit fuzzier with the Old Testament.
So, I mean, one of the things that I distinctly remember growing up, I didn't talk about the Bible much to my playground friends. It might surprise you, but I was known to be a Christian. I think one of the things that was put to me was that the Bible was just made up by some sort of monk in the 5th century. Who
conspiracy theory.
He just got himself maybe slightly drunk and went with the flow of things. So are you saying how do we know that wasn't the case? Like you're mentioning dates that are quite old. Do we have documents from that point, what's the evidence to show that these things were actually around?
So, a conspiracy theory like that is great, isn't it? Made up by a monk in the 5th century.
Yeah, I mean, these were 11-year-olds, so I think to be fair to them, they probably... Yeah, and I don't think the internet just about existed then, so these things have blown up probably even more since then.
The response to that, there's actually several elements to that suggestion, though, that we can pick apart. The first one is dating. So the earliest part of any part of the New Testament that we have a copy of is Papyrus 52. It's kept in the John Rylands Library in Manchester. It's about the size of a credit card. It's got some verses from John 17 and John 18 on either side of it in Greek, and carbon dating puts that to about 125 in the 2nd century, plus minus 25 years either side. There is some debate over that, but that's generally the date for that. So 5th century monk, actually no, because it was written before then. The earliest copy of anything written by Paul is Papyrus 46, that dates to about 200 or so. A lot of the Old Testament texts, copies were found in the Dead Sea Scrolls, which is an amazing thing. The story, if you don't know the story of this, in about 1947, there was a shepherd boy who threw some stones into some caves, and he heard a smashing sound. He thought, that sounds like fun, so he threw some more stones in. I heard some more smashing sounds. Eventually, it turned out that he was smashing valuable vases, big pots that contained the texts and old copies of religious texts from a community that had been hidden in those caves from the 1st century, so before Jesus' time. And our earliest copy of Isaiah comes from the Isaiah scroll, maybe about 125 BC or BCE.
Wow.
So actually, the suggestion that your 5th century monk made that up, we've got a copy that dates from 100 years or so before Jesus of that.
Okay, so it's good to know that teenagers haven't changed much in culture. That's still
there's lots of rumours about what was really going on with the discovery of the Dead Sea Scrolls. So again, it's a little bit
quite
fuzzy.
happenstances.
And how did it happen? But actually,
now, have you got any facts you want to throw?
Well, I just want to say all of this information is correct.
Okay,
Excellent. In New Testament, the shortest scroll that we got is Papyrus. Papyrus 52. It's a small piece of Gospel of John, possibly dating the first half of the 2nd century CE for complete manuscript.
Okay, cool. Thanks for adding that extra information there. I feel.
Can I take on a second part of the conspiracy theory? Which is that a monk made it up.
Yeah.
And the thing is, if you were going to make up stuff about the early church, about Jesus, you would do a much better job.
Oh, really?
Yeah, you would. You see, there's a story of the night before Jesus was arrested. Peter, one of his key followers, one of the early church leaders, has followed Jesus, and Jesus has been arrested. And some of the people say to him, "You're one of his followers." He says, "No, I'm not." And they say, "You've got a northern accent," a bit like you, Luke.
Yes.
They've got a northern accent. It's from Galilee. He's northern. Your voice sounds northern. You must be one of his followers.
Yeah.
It's genuinely, you read Mark's Gospel, they pick him out because his northern accent. He says, "No, it's not me." And he denies Jesus, and he's embarrassed and ashamed by this. Now, if you were going to make up a story about the early church, that's a really embarrassing story to put in. Okay. That is not a story that makes Peter look good. That is a warts and all story. And actually, that gives it a kind of a ring of truth. When Jesus, the morning of the resurrection, who saw Jesus first? That's right. It was an important man who had the authority, because no, it wasn't actually.
Okay.
It was women. The first people to see Jesus after resurrection was women whose testimony wasn't valid. If you were going to make it up, then you wouldn't make up that. Surely you wouldn't make up that.
That's a good challenge and an argument that I should have said to my childhood friend at the time, but it would pass me by.
The same goes for King David and some of the Old Testament stories. I mean, King David, the great king of Israel, you want to portray him in a good light, don't you? But actually, there's a ring of truth to the story of he saw a woman, he fancied her, he got her pregnant, realised he shouldn't have done this because it was adultery, covered it up by arranging for her husband to be sent to the front line, blah, 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 blah. It's like that story does not paint King David in a good way, which kind of actually gives it a bit of a ring of truth.
Okay. All right. Well, I think we're going to take a short break there. We've got another panelist to throw into the mix after the break. But thank you, Pete, for all your insights there. So we'll be back in a little while, and we'll see you in a bit. So thank you very much. Welcome back to Bible After Hours. Thank you for joining again we're now in the second half. Pete, you've been amazing. I think very really insightful stuff going on. During the break, we ran another poll. This one is a little bit more controversial, I would say, potentially. This one, we'll see how it goes. But the question, Narek, what was the question that we asked?
The question was, do you think the Bible is inerrant? Inerrant. And
what does the inerrant mean?
Well, according to Google and ChatGPT, is that the word inerrant means without error or mistake. In a religious or theological context, it's often used to describe the Bible. So if someone says the Bible is inerrant, they mean it contains no mistakes or errors in what it teaches. In general usage, it can apply to anything claimed to be completely accurate or flawless.
Okay, all right. So we've got 4 different answers. So we'll see what our audience thinks. So what were the results?
Great. So we had 4 options. Option number 1 was yes, completely.
What did we get for option 1 then? How many people?
Option 1, so 36% of the people in audience voted for yes, completely.
Okay.
The second second response was, is completely trustworthy for spiritual and moral truth, but may not be free from minor historical or scientific inaccuracies. Okay. So that was 18% of the audiences voted for that option.
Yeah.
And then the third option was, it requires interpretation to understand the human author's intent. That was 27% of the room voted for that. And then 18% of the room voted for it's wrong in many ways.
Okay, so I was actually really quite a broad set of thoughts there from people.
Very diverse opinions.
Okay, well that was super interesting to see what people thought about that, and that's, I'm sure, one of those ongoing topics that we will probably cover off pretty much every one of these sessions. Really, how accurate is it, and what is it meant to be? And we still have Pete with us. Pete has continued to join us, but we're now also going to be joined by Becky as well. So, Becky, do you want to join us? Welcome to Bible After Hours, Becky.
Thank you very much. Just going to try and slide onto my chair.
Yes,
for the joyful energy in the room.
Before we do go into sort of a bit of a chat together, Becky, we had some questions in the break as well from our audience. Many good questions. Some we will maybe cover off at the end, but I think we'll maybe throw 1 or 2 in now, some short ones before we start with the chat with Becky's. Now, do you have 1 or 2 that you think we could throw into to Pete and Becky? Maybe Pete.
Yes, the first one was £3.50 for a pint is a bargain.
Yes,
who paid £3.50 for a pint? I didn't pay £3.50 for a pint.
Well, someone said that they paid that.
And I'm not
price.
sure it is a bargain.
I don't know if we're allowed to name brands. We don't name the brand on the podcast, but do if you want to join us next time for £3.50 a pint. This is the cheapest drink in Birmingham that I've found so far.
Okay, good.
Well, the first question, which is one of the most liked questions here on Slido, is it says, why do the Catholics have more books in their Bible?
Oh, good question.
Very good question.
Pete, have you got a short answer on that one?
I don't have the shortest of answers on that one.
What do you reckon?
So part of it is to do with in fact, Catholics have more books, and some of the Orthodox churches have even more books as well.
Okay.
So the 39 books we talk about in our Protestant Old Testament, add 7 books, and then you've got a Catholic Old Testament. Although there is some kind of recognition that some of those books, this is like 1st and 2nd Maccabees, Tobit, Judith, Ecclesiasticus, and one or two others that slipped my mind at the moment. There's a question of, are they of equal status? Are they useful for personal reading, or should they be rejected completely? And they are quite fun. I've read them all. The Book of Tobit's quite a fun story. It's the story of a man who a bird poos, it hits him in the eye, and a bird poos, it hits him in the other eye, and he's blinded by this. So he's blinded by bird droppings. And at the end of the story, he gets his sight back, I think.
Okay.
So an interesting thing there, Maccabees is really interesting history, because actually there's this gap of what happens between the Old Testament and the New Testament, and Maccabees fills in some of that history from the 2nd century.
So the Protestants decided to not have these in their Bible.
Yeah, so with the Protestant Reformation, and part of it is to do with the languages some of those books were written in, and acceptance, and the Protestant church saying we're going to follow things that are in the Jewish canon, rather than following the church canon. Some rejecting of some of the ideas there is part of it.
Okay. Does that mean the Jewish scriptures? Or
the Jewish scriptures
don't have those.
So no, the Jewish scripture wouldn't have those books, I don't think, or wouldn't be recognised as part of what we've been calling the Old Testament or Hebrew Bible. To take one of the other questions which I've seen, someone on the Slido asked, isn't it called the Tanakh? Which it is, which is TNK, so Torah, the first 5 books. The Nevi'im, which is the prophets, which is like Joshua, Judges, 1 and 2 Samuel, 1 and 2 Kings, Isaiah, Jeremiah, Ezekiel, and then the 12 minor prophets as one book. And then the Ketuvim, which is the writings, which is everything else that's Old Testament, which is 39 books in our Protestant Old Testament, but in the Tanakh it's actually 24 books in total, because they divide them up differently.
Okay, but this is the same.
Yeah, but the Tanakh wouldn't include, I don't think, off the top of my head, you might want to fact check this, I don't think the Tanakh includes 1st and 2nd Maccabees and Judith and Tobit and so on.
Okay. I can see Narek busily Googling away to see if it is in there or not. The problem is that some of these words are quite hard to spell.
Actually, the question is no, it's not in the Tanakh.
Okay.
The extra 7 books that Pete has mentioned, Tobit, Judith, Wisdom of Solomon, the Ecclesiastes, Baruch, 1 Maccabees and 2 Maccabees, none of them are found in Tanakh.
Oh, okay. Right. Good fact. Brilliant. Right. Well, I want to move on to the second part of the evening, which is we sort of covered very briefly in reality, but Pete, you've done a great job in what is the Bible. The next bit really is around why would I want to read it and how would I read it? And so, Becky, that's why I thought I'd get you involved as well. So, Becky, you lead the church that I go to, which is Birmingham Vineyard Southside. And so you've been instrumental in supporting me and many others in their understanding of the Bible. What do you do on day to day then?
What do I do? Do you know what? Someone asked me that once. She sat me down. She put my kids in front of a film, poured us both a glass of wine, and went, "What is it that you do?
Right.
Like, what is the job?" Because she said she's from the south of France, and she said, "My parents don't go to church. My grandparents don't go to church. The only thing I know is like a priest, like a man who's a Catholic." With a robe and no kids, and you are none of those things.
Yeah, I've never seen you in a dog collar.
Never seen you in a robe. You clearly are married. Like what? And you're clearly a woman. What's going on? And I said, it's somewhere between kind of life coaching and event management and email and prayer. Those are kind of what I spend my life doing. So I think my favourite thing about it is kind of church is this brilliant worshipping community where you're all kind of trying to find a way to God or trying to find some kind of spiritual connection, and often centered around the Bible, often centered around community, but there's lots of different characters and different people coming into that space. And so what you get to do, if you get to do my job, is to kind of help those people feel welcome, bring them in, help them kind of answer some of those spiritual questions, kind of connect with something, with God, with Jesus, and then create a space where that happening. So that's what I love. That's what I like doing.
Okay. It sounds like you're the perfect person to ask, how do you read the Bible? I guess this
Really?
is...
Okay, yeah.
Yeah. You must be talking about this relatively regularly. So hence I thought I'd bring you in because I think you might have maybe some top tips on how to read it.
I'll do my best.
Yeah. But first, I guess it'd be interesting to know, I guess, a little bit of your story and how you came about to reading the Bible. If you're leading a church, I guess in my mind or maybe people's minds, you were just sort of born with a Bible in hand. And
uncomfortable for your mum, I think.
If nothing else, yeah.
If nothing else, yeah.
Absolutely.
Just a small copy of the New Testament.
Right, yeah. Just a pamphlet size or something, maybe. So when was it that you first sort of thought that this was an interesting thing to do? Has it been there since like you were 5, or is it like just like yesterday? I'm assuming it wasn't yesterday.
Yes.
I hope not.
just been quite a busy day. No, I actually have I've had a bit of a tangled relationship with the Bible a little bit, probably.
Right.
We didn't really go to church when I was young, but I did go to a C of E primary school. So if that's any of your story, you know that you've just heard bits in assembly, or like there's just the things painted on the wall, maybe a Noah's Ark sort of story type thing. And actually there was something I've always felt sort of slightly drawn towards, some kind of idea of God, or some of those things. I really enjoyed kind of that spiritual kind of atmosphere, for want of a better word, like that kind of feeling you get in a church place or in that kind of quiet space. But my mum became a Jehovah's Witness when I was about 6 or 7, and that was a very different experience, because I think their kind of modus operandi, for want of a better word, is sort of a kind of Friday night was our Bible study night.
We're recording this on a Thursday, so we're
recording a Thursday night. No, this is different as well. This is quite a different experience. So you kind of sit and they'd have a Bible, which is a specific translation that they have, and then they'd have another book with it, which was significantly thicker, and that has sort of pictures and a bit of a Q&A in it. And essentially, you would read a passage of the Bible, then you'd read a passage of the book, and then the book would have kind of a question and answer about how to interpret the Bible.
Sounds sensible enough.
It does, except you can't ask different questions, and you can't disagree, or at least that was my takeaway from it as 7, 8, 9-year-old person, and I think I found, being in that for sort of 5 or 6 years, that it was very much like, I'm not going to wave my Bible, it's a bit far away, but it was a bit like being hit over the head with something that was just, this is what you should do, this is how you should live morally, and honestly you'll never measure up to it. And so I think I came away from that, my early teens, stopped going along to this, and sort of, this is not what I want to do. I'm not feeling God. That whatever that sense of spirituality was that I got in church when I was very small, this is not what this is. And so for me, I was like, that really turned me off of the Bible as a thing, and I just thought, this isn't for me. There's just such a gulf between how I want to live and what this is.
So what was it that in any way brought you back? Because I often find people from that sort of background that have maybe decided that it's not for them. That can sometimes be the rest of their life it's not for them. So what was it that made you decide that actually it was for you, and that you're going to set up a church and go for it?
I went to university. So I went to university at 21. Maffed around a little bit between sixth form and going to university, and finally went and I was studying English literature, which I love. I love stories. I love poems. I love all of these sort of Pete's been talking about, genre and kind of what's in the Bible and how it's written, and I think I love literature, so that's partly why it's got me. But I went to university very, very sure that I wasn't a Christian, very sure that this was all just twaddle, for want of a better word, that Christians hadn't sort of engaged their intellect properly. That's why you would.
No, could you just fact check if the Bible is twaddle for me?
No, just Christianity in general, Narek.
Oh, Christianity, the whole thing.
Just put that into ChatGPT, see what comes up. No, so that was what I went to university with, very sure I was right, but also kind of with this sense of missing something, I don't know, some kind of purpose. And at university, unexpectedly, I met Christians who had thought about it, who'd really genuinely taken the time to think through their faith, who knew some answers to some questions, and who dealt with the Bible differently. And I got invited along to a church that taught the Bible but didn't do the bashing over the head, you could ask questions. We actually had a small group Bible study thing that met in a pub, very much like this one.
Okay.
And
was it recorded for a podcast?
It wasn't recorded for a podcast, and I was allowed to go out for a cigarette every 20 minutes. So it was just, it was perfect.
We're not allowing that tonight. I'm sorry, guys. There's no cigarette breaks.
No, well, it's it's not 2005 anymore. We can't smoke indoors, right? And that for me was a turning point. I was like, oh, this is a living thing. Like for some people who they it's not like they switch their brain off. They're not in some sort of odd cult. They ask questions. They're not sure. They're having this conversation with God and kind of, they're engaging with this thing as literature, but they're also doing, and it's alive for them at some level, and it's having an effect on them that seems really positive. I mean, it was the most positive community I'd sort of ever been part of, and so that was what cinched it for me. I think that's what made me want to keep exploring it, because it was clearly having a really positive effect on these people.
Okay, fair enough. No pressure then. We've got to have a positive effect on the people who are listening to this podcast.
I mean, I'm fairly sold on the whole thing now, to be honest.
Right.
So, I mean, you can try it. You can try it.
Let's see if we can sell it to other people, shall we? So if you were to if you were to choose like one bit of the Bible that was like, this is the thing that sort of means something to you, or maybe was the first one that when you were reading the Bible was the first thing that jumped out at you as genuinely being maybe even life-changing. Is there anything that in there that you'd throw in the mix as a starter for 10 as something that you think was just blew you away, or even close to?
It's actually something that came up for me quite recently. I don't know if any of you have seen the Chosen series on Netflix. It's quite good. It's a dramatization of the life of Jesus. So it's not like, obviously no camera was following. I'm assuming Pete, it's not going to be historic yet. There's no camera following him around. Peter didn't have a GoPro on him at the time. Like, that's not.
No. Pete is confirming with a shake of his head.
It's not like a completely historic
forgot he's a podcaster.
The first.
I fact-checked that. ChatGPT says no.
That. Yeah.
Good, thanks, Dan.
It's not one of the lost books of the Bible. Netflix. But there's the first episode of it is Jesus essentially pursuing this woman who is just in a really, really dark place in lots of different ways. And he quotes this bit from Isaiah to her, which is Isaiah 43.
As a chat-up line? Why was he doing that?
Well, she really needed help. Although now you've made it weird.
Okay, fine. Okay.
Now you've made it really
makes
weird.
more sense now. Sorry.
No, she was really in need of help, and so he kind of helps her, and then she just keeps running away, which was very much my kind of story. That I was like, well, I don't want to be religious. Those people are mad. But I just kept having these encounters with God, and his what he says to her is, "Do not fear. I have redeemed you. I have called you by name. You are mine." And there was something about those words for her in that episode, but that was probably my experience of. I was actually, it was about 3:00 in the morning actually when I decided, okay, if God is real, then I want in. That
is the holy time.
It was 3:00 in the morning. I'd been giving up smoking, which means that I had not smoked all day, and then bought a packet of 20 at 1:00 in the morning, and gone and smoked like 5 walking around central London, because that's what I was incompetently doing. And I ended up sat outside this random church in like East London, and just sitting down and being like, do you know what? If you're real, I really need you. Like I've come to the end of what I can do on my own. I really need you. And I didn't know this verse at the time, but that's the sense that I had. That not just that God is helpful or out there, or that the Bible's interesting, or that there's this nice community, but actually there is a God who knows you and calls you by name and wants to be with you. And I was sold on him from that point on. Not necessarily Christian theology or the Bible or anything else, but I was sold on that person, that God that I'd met. So.
Okay, so if you were like, if you'd never read the Bible before, are you essentially saying pack of 20, 3:00 at night? That's the point to start.
Yeah, that's fine. We'll get some cigarettes. We'll just walk home. I don't smoke anymore, just so you guys know. Right. So it's too expensive these days. Also bad for you.
We are not promoting any of these things. So what if you're not going to do that? No. Where's a good place to start then to pick up the Bible?
To start reading the Bible.
At the beginning, maybe you just start from Genesis number 1 and just read through, or is there some other more logical way?
I think, like Pete said, obviously that's kind of where the story does kind of start in the beginning of the Bible, but it's also much further removed from our kind of time and culture in Genesis, which is the first book in the Bible. And then it will take. I mean, you've got to have some stamina, I think, to come at it for the first time. It is a really interesting story and a really beautiful text. But I think if you start it for the very first time, the Gospels are a really good place to start. So start with those lives of Jesus, because they're written to be your first introduction, aren't they? Is that right? They're written. The people who wrote them to say, this is what we saw happen. This is what Jesus was aiming to do, and this is how you can know God. And so that's a really great place to kind of begin that journey.
Pete, what are the Gospels, Pete? So what books are they? When were they written?
So Matthew, Mark, Luke, and John are the 4 Gospels. It's quite commonly agreed in sort of New Testament scholarship that they are like ancient biographies, which means they're not like modern biographies. They're kind of formed the fact of ancient biographies. Mark's Gospel probably written first. I would date it around 65. Although there's some debate about that, and it starts with Jesus as an adult. It focuses on the last few years of his life, his public ministry, and refocuses on his death and his dying. There's a little bit at the end where after that, Matthew's Gospel appears to have copied bits of Mark's Gospel, but fills out the story with more of Jesus' teaching. Also written within the first century, there would have been people alive who would have been around when Jesus was around. Luke's Gospel, Luke admits to having read other Gospels, also uses bits of Mark as well. And then there's John's Gospel, and John actually says in his Gospel, this is written so that you might believe. And John's Gospel is a little bit different to the other 3, has some different stories in it, events that Jesus is teaching, but they all have Jesus' death in them and resurrection.
When you talk about like the kind of the ones that were more popular and those kind of becoming the ones that were kind of used, is that also a kind of first century fact checking happening, because there were people alive who would read other versions presumably or different things that were about and go, that isn't how it worked out?
Yeah, I think so. I think there is an extent to which some of the Gospels that didn't make it into the Bible, which I've got a copy of, which you can have a look at in a bit, didn't make it because they were either not so helpful, not so useful, or just plain weird. In the case of some of them. Okay,
so we're saying start the Gospels rather than Genesis. I mean, I have read through the Bible a couple of times myself, from cover to cover, and Genesis I think is great. And then, some of the other books later on tend to be more heavy reading, it's fair to say. There's some laws and lots of numbers and various other things that aren't necessarily things that would get you hugely excited. So, yeah, you can potentially lose a little bit of the enthusiasm if you dive into those. But the Gospels may be a little bit more accessible as a place to start.
Yeah, definitely start there as your first thing. And then you can also buy, so this is I'm just noticing the difference between mine and Pete's Bible. So if you're listening to the podcast, I've got a huge sort of yellow tome that's got pictures in it and lots of space to kind of write and draw and highlight things.
Are there any Hebrew and Greek words in there?
No, there's not. There's some line drawings of people covered in flowers and things. But I got it partly because I like writing questions or little notes or things that just go sort of what.
Is that allowed? Can you write in the Bible?
Yeah, it's not. I think it's quite different to other kind of holy books. Well, as an object, no. I think there's that always been kind of the case for Christians, Pete, that it's the kind of the words themselves and the God kind of who sits kind of behind them and inspires them. Yes. But actually, the object itself, like I've spilled olive juice on this. I'm not even sure how I did that.
That's very
it's a very specific stain.
Classy.
But
there's an early copy of the New Testament, which is in Greek, and obviously one scribe has copied this out. Right. And another scribe has come along and corrected it and changed it and said, you made a mistake here. Another scribe has gone and said, no, it was right in the first place. And they've written in Greek, fool and knave, don't change it. So actually there are cases of that, of bits of...
monks insulting each other on the Bible, that's what we're...
That's that sort of thing, yeah.
Okay, fair enough.
And that means, and I think that is how we deal with it, not just as an object, but as a book. Like it's inviting us to ask questions and have a conversation with God and interact with it. It's, even the thing, I think that it's not that God's chosen to kind of speak to people through something which isn't written by one person. It doesn't just have one voice. It's 40 plus different authors and 66 different books in all these different genres and styles. And over this huge period of time, I think for me that's really helpful in that God is inviting humans into a conversation that's ongoing. And he's inviting you into doing that and to really wrestling with it. And so I think the other thing is to kind of, I'm probably going to misquote someone famous, and I don't know who it is, but there's that thing of, start the journey where you actually are. Like, that's where you start from. And so coming with, this is genuinely what I struggle with. This is, I think someone on the Slido said the Bible's quite wrong and unhelpful. Like, yeah, that's exactly what I thought. Like, come to it with those questions. Come with that start. Come and have that conversation with it as a text and wrestle with it.
And would you just like read through the Gospels, or like, I've seen some people just sort of, throw it open at any random text and just look at the first verse, and that might be the time, that is what God's saying to them right there and then.
Jeff tried to make me move house once by doing that.
Oh,
my husband was
right.
there. But I've just looked at this, and then we sort of, I don't know, that's how you're supposed to do it.
That was evidence enough to move house.
Although one of my friends did say that he was praying about this girl that he liked, and then he read the verse, "Go out with joy," and her name was Joy. So he was like, clearly the Lord. And I did say to him, there's quite a lot of, I don't know, is that, could you repeat that experiment? Is there Anthea? Is there, Rachel?
Quite a limited
there was a
set
Rachel,
of
isn't
female
there?
names that it would actually work for in reality.
Kezia, that sort of thing.
So, but is that a good way of doing things? I mean, I've seen it done. Clearly, it's been done by some of your friends, and maybe that worked. Did they marry Joy?
They did marry Joy.
Oh,
yeah.
There we go. God spoke.
But then no one else
moment.
can, right? So that only works once.
Only works once. Yeah, there's maybe more than one Joy in the world, but yeah, it's narrow, niche at the best.
To be honest, I think that's probably a bit weird.
So what would you do
like
then? You would read
it?
through like a chapter or a whole book, or would you read like particular themes, like just look for the bits that talk about whatever it is you're interested in, I guess, at the time? Or what do you think, what would be your...
You get some really good Bible reading plans, can't you? So if you're really interested in kind of studying it, I mean, you talked about a Bible app earlier on. There are some Bible reading plans on there, some that are like, you can do the whole Bible in a year, or you can do a week looking at wisdom or at something else that might help you, or, I think there's even ones for, like, if you're feeling down, or if you're some other kind of reasons you might want to pick up the Bible.
I did mention the Bible app earlier.
Yes, the
off
Bible app.
Tape. So for those people who are listening,
Bible app, that's the one that's really one of the ones that's really helpful.
Yeah, so you can download. People listening, you can download the Bible app. There's a whole lot of different translations available through that app, which is maybe we can touch on translations. There's different types of translations, but also there's the reading guides, like you say, and various things. So as far as a place to start, if you've never touched a Bible, you've never been near a Bible, it's free, right?
It is, yeah. The version's just free.
Yeah, you can download that, and then there'll be ways of getting into it from there, I guess. On the translations point, Pete, there's a whole load of different translations. If you download the app, you can get. When I say translations, I mean not just into different languages, but also into the phrasing of it is different, right? So, are there particular ones that you think are worth the modern day person reading rather than maybe the 13th century individual? What would be the good ones to potentially dive into as a starter for 10?
Wow. So if you're going to read a Bible in English, then there are two things that need to be considered. To make a Bible, you need to, for any ancient book before the printing press, you couldn't mass produce identical copies of the book. So you've got to work out what the book said, which is called textual criticism. You're getting all the early copies, comparing them, working out what was originally written, and establishing your text in Greek or Hebrew, Aramaic, whatever. Then you're translating it. And if anyone here can speak more than one language, you will know that often there's more than one way to translate something. You will know that actually sometimes you can't quite translate quite what you mean, or there's kind of you miss something. Something in Greek could be a play on words, and you can't translate that into English. It just won't work. So my suggestion is that you want to have a version of the Bible that you can understand. I know some people can get attached to their King James version, and that's still the Bible. God can still speak to it. You can still learn history through it and so on. But actually, when I read the King James version, I just get confused because that's not the English I speak. So actually, a good version that's in contemporary English, and also you want a version where they've used good manuscript evidence to establish what the text was in the first place.
Okay.
And by all means, have more than one version of the Bible in English and compare them, and then you might quickly discover where there's something that's difficult to translate. But NIV is useful. The U version as an app is a good start point.
NIV. I've got the Good News Bible in front of me here. I don't know what versions, Becky, that you've got there. But there's also ones like the Message, which is a sort of I guess it's not quite sort of street language, but it's modern day, very modern, up to date. But it's not potentially a full translation, right? It's paraphrase. Is that right?
Yeah, so it's a paraphrase of the term that would be used. When you're translating something, you can try and translate it word for word. And if you speak another language, you'll know that word-for-word translation can be very helpful, but sometimes makes no sense. Or you can translate kind of thought for thought or idiom for idiom, trying to make it make sense. Or you can really quite freely rewrite it using your own words, changing bits of it, trying to get the gist of it.
Mm-hmm.
And the message is more quite a free translation. If you're going to translate the message back into Greek or into Hebrew, then you could end up with something looking a little bit different.
Okay.
But there's still value in it. But just also, if you speak more than one language, you'll know that sometimes you have to choose what that word means and then interpret it according to your choice. And so there's more decisions have been made about, with the message.
Okay. Before we finish, I think it'd be good to read the Bible. I think Pete's done a few bits and pieces, but Becky, as we're looking at the Bible now, if we're going to sort of say, look, this is worth somebody looking at, and that maybe never read it before, we're going to go into the Gospels maybe as the first place to start. Is there a particular short story that we could sort of throw out there and say, look, if you're going to read the Bible, this is the sort of thing you're going to come across that would be of interest and would just sort of illustrate sort of the potential challenges and the things that we might look into further on into other podcasts. Have you got a particular chapter or verse that you think would be worth us going into?
Yeah, I mean, we talked about maybe Matthew 9, didn't we, which we've done
right
kind of recently. So that's so it's all organised into chapters and verses, which I don't think they're not in the original. So that was a monk at some point who just
not a monk
was
actually.
It not?
The chapters of our English Bible were first introduced in 1205 by Stephen Langton, who I think was the Archbishop of Canterbury at the time, and the current system of verses that we use would be 1551 in Stephanus and Estienne's version of the Bible.
Okay.
Did they just get sick of going, about 3/4 of the way through, halfway down the page, that bit?
Yeah, so for like nearly 1,000 years, that's what they were doing.
There was a system called the Eusebian Canons, which was comparing the Gospels, and where there were things that were repeated across the Gospels that was in use before that. But that's kind of dropped out of use. So
you've gone for Matthew 9. In fact, Narek, I'm going to get you to read this, if you can. So can you look up Matthew 9, and then what was the verses, Becky, that you think was it?
I like the fact we did talk about this beforehand, Luke. Verses 9 to 13. Yeah, there we go.
Okay, cool.
You noted it down.
Great, I got it already. Yeah.
Oh, it's like we prepped it before. I don't want to. You were just lifting the lid of the preparation that we've done. It's meant to be secret.
To think you're unprepared, Luke.
Mate, I'm the Google guy, so I have to be all accurate. Anyway, I'm gonna read it. Matthew 9, chapter 9, verse 9 to 13. The calling of Matthew. As Jesus went on from there, he saw a man named Matthew sitting at the tax collector's booth. "Follow me," he told them, and Matthew got up and followed them. While Jesus was having dinner at Matthew's house, many tax collectors and sinners came and ate with him and his disciples. When the Pharisees saw this, they asked his disciples, "Why does your teacher eat with tax collectors and sinners?" On hearing this, Jesus said, "It is not the healthy who need doctor, but the sick. But go and learn what this means. I desire mercy, not sacrifice. For I have not come to call the righteous, but sinners."
Okay, so you think this in some way illustrates the Bible and maybe Christianity to an element as well. So what things of that story would you pull out, Becky, that sort of show that this is of genuine interest? Because on a reading it sounds interesting, but maybe there's a little bit more to it that I'm initially missing.
Yeah, I think it probably illustrates you meet Jesus, who is acting oddly, clearly for the people around him, but you also then need to dig a little bit deeper, don't you, to go what is going on? Because there's a booth, there's a tax collector, who doesn't appear to be acting quite the same way as our dear old HMRC. sending letters.
Tax collectors usually not known for being popular.
Not known for being popular, no, although slightly different in this point as well. And then a Pharisee, what's that? And then Jesus makes some kind of comment about doctors and sick people. So significance of tax collectors and Pharisees. Can you?
So the land was occupied by the Romans. And so if you were a tax collector, you were, so Matthew, or Levi as he's known as well, was colluding with the oppressors, which is not a particularly popular thing to do. He's working with the Gentiles, which is not a great thing to do.
Gentiles being non-Jews.
Yeah, in that time. Also, the tax collectors were allowed to keep some of the money. So you were kind of seen as
wealthy.
He was wealthy off the back of collecting foreign taxes. This is not a thing that's going to make you any friends, but it's going to make you some money.
I'm trying to think of a modern day comparison, but I think if food names out there, then it might cause some controversy. But these are the sort of people that you, if I was hanging out with a guy now who was making money off the back of people who are oppressing other people, I would not be seen in a popular light.
Correct.
And actually, it's the religious people, the Pharisees, who are kind of religious leaders at the time, who are saying, no, you shouldn't be hanging out with them. Like, you shouldn't be, Jesus literally goes up to this person. So his booth would have been at a crossroads or in the middle of a town, really easily accessible. So he'd have gone up to him in public and said, hey, come with me. And then not just had Matthew come out and go with him, but then followed Matthew home and sat and had dinner with, which in itself is quite a significant thing for a Jewish person, isn't it? To go and sit in someone's house who is seen as a kind of an unholy or unclean kind of person. That's a big thing to do.
So he's challenging, Jesus, I guess, is known to challenge norms, but he's challenging norms not just in dealing with the poor, which is obviously something that Christians and Jesus is well known for, but he's actually bringing into his, Matthew became one of the 12 disciples, right? So he's bringing into his inner circle individuals that I think we would still be quite uncomfortable in having in churches nowadays. Is that right?
Yeah, potentially. I mean, I think, and Jesus does then, when he's challenged by these religious people to say, like, you shouldn't be hanging out with these guys, he does answer them, but I think Jesus's original plan isn't just to kind of challenge the status quo. He actually just wants to be with this man and his friends. And then he kind of makes this analogy, doesn't he? Like, it's not the healthy who need a doctor, but those who are ill. And so he's almost saying, okay, well, you say I'm a teacher. That's what he's talking about, teacher and rabbi. He's in this role as a religious teacher, as a religious leader. And, it's like someone saying, well, I teach the New Testament for a living and I'm a Christian, but I'm going to go and hang out with these people. And then actually that being questioned by somebody saying you shouldn't be with these people. And Jesus is saying, well, actually, what you're kind of saying to me is, it's like I'm a doctor, but I shouldn't go to the hospital, because that would be like I might get sick at the hospital. Like, that's I'm a doctor, but I should be 3 streets away, because that's really silly. And he's saying, no, that makes no sense whatsoever. Actually, if the people who need God the most, the people who need a connection to Jesus, to God, to spirituality, the people who need help are the people who are actually, in need of the help. And he kind of points that out and kind of keeps bringing that back when he talks to the Pharisees about actually that they kind of have this monopoly on faith and on kind of religious practice and morality, and they want to kind of keep that separate. But Jesus is sense of, well, no, that's not. I'm representing what God wants to do. What God wants to do is go and meet these people, right, and go and be with them. And so that's what he does.
Wow. Okay. I guess the question is, did Matthew, continue what he was doing, retire on a very nice pension, go live somewhere next to the coast, and that was it? His encounter with Jesus was just a nice highlight in an otherwise maybe dubious career. Narek, I'd be interested to know who this Matthew guy ended up being. Did he retire to the coast, or did he? What happened to him? Did
is that
he
the
change?
dream of every Brummie, Luke? Just to
I don't know. I'm just in my head thinking, nice on the Israel coast, the Mediterranean.
First, he obviously continued his ministry among the Jewish people, so spreading the gospel among the Jewish people. Then he traveled abroad to countries like Ethiopia, Persia, and some say he also reached Syria and Macedonia. So these are the places he went to preach the gospel. And then his death, it's people say that it's uncertain. about his death. We don't know how he died. Some people say that he died naturally. It was a natural death. Some people say that he was martyred while preaching the gospel in Ethiopia or the Persia, or now we call it modern day Iran.
Wow. Okay. So what we can also conclude from this encounter was that Jesus, in some way, changed this guy's trajectory in his life. There was a change in. He didn't continue on with the thing that he was doing. I guess he went and sort of was a disciple with Jesus, and I guess there's stories about that in the Bible. What happens next?
I guess the book of Matthew is attributed to this guy. Is that right? And is that fair? How accurate are we talking? Do we not really know if that's him or is that?
So Matthew's gospel doesn't say, "I am the author of this book. This is who I am." So there is some possibility for debate. Inscriptions on the manuscripts later on talk about kata Mattheon according to Matthew, so that is our church tradition. But there's an element to which that there is some debate about who actually wrote Matthew's gospel. Maybe Matthew, this man in the story, is the source behind it, but someone else did the actual writing.
Which isn't unusual in the Greek world either, is it?
So in a world where lots of people are illiterate, although if he was a tax collector, maybe he would have had some.
You've seen count the numbers at least.
Yeah. So I think we need to be a little bit cautious about what Matthew did after this story, because there are some massive gaps in our knowledge, and we're looking at where some of it's conjecture, some of it is church tradition that may not have the most reliable information behind it. But actually, there's also not too much reason to doubt that this changed his life.
And coming back to the text, it's got that ring of truth again, hasn't it? Because I think if you're going to write a story about 12 men who changed the world, you don't normally go, well, they were. I mean, I guess we do now, because our culture is so influenced by Christianity. We do have that story of, well, he was a rotter, or he was really difficult, he was an awful guy, but then suddenly had this moment of clarity and became the hero. But that's not usual. That's a kind of a Christian narrative, isn't it? That's come through in our culture.
It is. I think if you read the Gospels really closely, what you discover, and you read the Acts, which is a follow-up to Luke's Gospel, is that actually the disciples didn't actually get it straight away. It took them a while. They still made mistakes. They still sometimes didn't quite get on with each other. They're not like Jesus calls them and they become perfect people straight away. There are bits where they squabble with each other, they bicker with each other, and it takes a while for some of the truth to sink in.
Okay. Right. Well, I mean, that's as a short little synopsis of the whole Christian faith and how Jesus can impact people. I think that's a brilliant example, Becky. So thanks for bringing that along. Well, I think we're gonna finish the formal part of the evening there. That's been really interesting to hear both your story, Becky, and how you came to read the Bible and what it's meant to you, and Pete, all the different the background to what the Bible is. So thank you very much for coming along. Narek, thank you for your insightful Googling. Very much appreciated. Thank you for the guests, for the audience, for joining us as well. We have the next one that we're going to be doing is going to be on purpose, and what does the Bible talk about in providing purpose in our lives. So check that one out as well. This is our first one, we don't actually have any podcasts yet out there, but by the time this is out there, it will be there. So please like and subscribe, I think is the thing that you're meant to say, so that you can get the next ones notified to you as well. I'm gonna, as we are doing this is a Bible study, I think it's best to finish in prayer. Why not?
You want to, yeah.
So I'm going to finish on a prayer that is lifted straight out of the Bible, because this is what it's all about tonight. So this is a prayer from Numbers 6 verses 24 to 26. So it says, "The Lord bless you and keep you. The Lord make his face shine on you and be gracious to you. The Lord turns his face toward you and give you peace." Amen. So thank you all for joining us, and we'll see you again soon next time.
Theme tune by Matt Parsons, produced by Luke Ollie.